And now back to your regular programming.
If you speak better to yourself.
You showed up for probably the dumbest conversation we've ever had on this show.
Let's have that smile again.
Tell me how that happens. Physically should not happen.
Relax.
If you say
Give me as well.
3 times a day, God will line it up.
He's just an absolute hack, and he gets his ass kicked by the teammates every week. It's just terrible.
Welcome back to Hack City. Joe DeLeone, Sean Anderson, 2 former college football players from the University of Rhode Island. Today, we are going to be recapping action from Week 3 of FCS Football. We've got Idaho trouncing Albany and SIU holding off a late comeback from Incarnate Word. All that coming up on today's show. Before we get to it, though, Sean, can you share with our listeners a word from our friends over at Bet Online?
Don't look over at me like that, please.
Why?
You're an unserious person, and I don't like that you're
turning. I don't like that you're
turning it on for the show.
Well, you've done shows just in general long enough with me to know, and also having done them in person recently long enough at this current moment. The more unhinged I am the first 10 minutes before recording, usually the better quality of the show.
I'm not so certain yet. Let me tell the kind people about Bet Online.
All right.
Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for everything football. Bet Online has every stat, every matchup, even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on their $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet Online, the game starts here.
All right. Thank you, Sean, for sharing that word with our listeners. So we had a lot happen in FCS football this weekend. Sean, I think before we get to the water cooler, the best way to sum up where we sit after week 3, after 3 weeks of play, a couple of week 0 games, we're at the part of the season where teams 18 to 25, or maybe if you want to dip further than that to 35, if we had an extended ranking, they all kind of stink. I was putting my ballot together, and there's just so many 1-2, 0-3 teams that were ranked in the preseason that it's now what do I do with this team? This always happens. There's always that random 0-3 team that comes screaming back in at week 10, and they're 9-2 or whatever it might be. They're 8-3 at any point in those final weeks, and suddenly they're on the playoff radar. It always happens. This is almost not a reminder because I don't really think that there's going to be a ton of pushback just generally, but this is just a reminder that teams that are ranked in the back end of the top 25 after 3 weeks of FCS football specifically, it is impossible to get those ones right because their resumes are all terrible. None of them have done anything. There are so few FCS teams. I went and looked through. I was just to put into my scope, how many teams are over 500 right now in FCS football? And there are really not that many. One of the only ones I could find that wasn't ranked prior to this was Rhode Island. That was one of the only ones that I can find that had a decent resume.
I had the big shuffle going along my list. 3 open spots between obviously 20 and 25. I'm booting teams out.
You gotta
Screw you,
Chattanooga.
Ewu. Yeah.
Ewu shouldn't have been. Did Ewu lose again?
Yeah, they lost again. Sela. Bad loss. But I'm scrolling through, and I'm sitting here who do I put in? Who am I rewarding here after what I've seen through 3 weeks of FCS football? All jokes aside, it's just an odd point in the season. It's puberty, it's growing pains.
Yep.
Eventually it's all going to get fleshed out and the polls will start making some sense. I'll probably get torched this week on Twitter for the poll that I'm putting out.
You should.
But it is what it is.
Ewu ranked last week.
At 25.
Is Chattanooga still ranked?
I took them off, I think.
Is Weber still ranked?
I did not have Weber on.
I'm trying to think who else had a really pissy week. Wait, I had one other team that I took off that had a really bad.
I took Elon off immediately.
Yeah, Elon was a really arbitrary one that I didn't think belonged. But again, I think once we get past, I didn't even move Chattanooga in this, but once we get past where we're at with Albany, which is probably slightly unacceptable to have ranked, but could still find their way there. There's really not many right answers. So
Did you leave Wofford on?
I left Wofford on. I don't get why Wofford.
Just a question.
I don't know. That's not just like me.
I left them on, man.
Okay, they should have been ranked. I don't know why they weren't ranked. They played a decently close. Actually, it was a close game, 28-21 against William & Mary. I'm not saying rank them because they had a close loss to a highly ranked team, but they're better than people realize. They're one of the few teams that does have a positive record and a strong record coming into their conference play. But let's get to the water cooler and recap what we missed from the week. Portland State cancels their game with South Dakota with what sounds like a headline from 1905 because the team caught whooping cough, of all things to have to cancel a game. Incredibly ridiculous. I understand that you don't want to spread anything, but how did your team catch whooping cough? It's week 3. What are we doing here?
Yeah, it's a goofy situation. I could kind of empathize because we had a player at one point on our team have a disease from 1905 that was pretty scary.
Staph infection?
It was I don't eat. Actually, all the public information was withheld of who had it and where it came from on campus, but a whole campus-wide email went out and we knew who it was.
What was the sickness?
I think it was tuberculosis. Genuinely. And we're like, how is this even possible? How could this even be conjured up in today's world?
FCS is just carrying harbingers of old disease.
Like, it doesn't help Portland State that the whooping cough is called the whooping cough. Like, it's a nasty thing to get caught with. If you're coughing all day, as someone who's had that cough and has had to get through it and fight the month after month and seen people go month after month, don't play the game. It was a smart decision. But whooping cough,
it's just a comical, ridiculous name for it. It sounds like it. The name of it sounds like it was clearly generated from 1905, and we couldn't have come up with a better name in that period of time since then.
It feels like anyone treating you with that disease has to have that weird medicine doctor mask with the beak and looking over you.
I appreciate that FCS football, a lot of teams play an old school style of football, hard-nosed, and they're going around catching very old diseases and sicknesses. So that is the world that we live in. Villanova, who I was disappointed with this week, they just barely squeaked by against Towson, 14-3. Towson's not a very good football program. Maybe they prove us wrong and they go on some sort of a run. But Villanova is supposed to be far more offensively potent than this. 14-13 win and a win in conference.
Villanova was dying to lose this game. Watkins was getting sacked all over the place. Villanova also sporting some of the ugliest shoulder stripes I've ever seen. They've got a great colorway. I don't know how you botched that. It looked hideous on the field, but Towson misses not one, but 2 game-winning field goals in the fourth quarter, one above the 2-minute mark, and one, they get the ball back, and you miss again. A 37-yarder straight on, pushed it right. First one was a doink off the crossbar. Villanova was dying to lose this game. Maybe they just came out a bit sleepy. I think they're better than this. Towson, maybe you're better than what I expected, but this was a weird, bad week for Villanova.
Yeah, really, really brutal loss. We're at the point of the season where the Southern Conference is just beating up on one another, and we've already got early matchups of teams in the conference. Mercer ends up staving off Chattanooga 10-3. Talk about a really old school score that we're reading there. Chattanooga is now 0-3. They moved off my ballot. Mercer is moving on up because they've had a really strong start to the year. Can't ignore the results that they've had.
Yeah, Mercer's defense is legit. Rusty Wright, after the game, head coach for Chattanooga, had this to say: when you're 0-12 on third down, I don't know how you win a football game. You're right. You are right, Coach Wright. Being 0-12 on third down, you can't win a game like that. I genuinely cannot think of the chess moves in my head of how I would even maneuver getting around 0-12 on third down. Mercer's defense, though, give them credit. It's not all about Chattanooga. They made the ballot. Chattanooga got sent off to Loser Island.
Moving on to the next game, North Dakota State played a really close one against ETSU, 38-35. They were down at halftime, I believe, when they were struggling with them. Very unexpected performance. Feels, and I know some people might roll their eyes at this, feels like the way that Georgia played this past weekend against Kentucky, a team that you know you're supposed to beat, that has some playmakers, some pieces that could keep the game close, but because you shot yourself in the foot, you allowed them to stay in it, and you were playing from behind for a period of time. But they do still come out with the victory. I'm not dinging them. I think it's overly reactionary for anybody to ding North Dakota State for a game like this, especially the way that they've started the season with some of their early big performances, especially that one against Colorado.
Yeah, a win is a win is a win. Be happy you got away with this one because they did. ETSU played their asses off, ran on them boys, 270 yards on the ground. Got it to the point where North Dakota State needed an onside kick recovery and got it. And Joe, it wasn't even the onside kick. I'm not sure if you saw it. It wasn't one of the, we're going to pop it in the air. North Dakota State did the most cruel thing in sports, which is just kick a dribbler right at somebody. And the ETSU guy just coughed it up. Rough scene. They get it. North Dakota State ends up winning. ETSU's head coach was a little upset after the game. Great quote from him. "We stole a loss from the jaws of victory." I've never heard that one, but I love it. And
a banger quote this week.
It was awesome. But yeah, ETSU played their hearts out. Really good game from both sides. I know it sounds patronizing after losing a heartbreaker to just think, oh, you played so hard. They did. They played a hell of a football game. North Dakota State did also. This was just a great one to see.
I'm punting on talking about Eastern Washington. For some reason, you just love giving them run, even though they were never deserving of it.
I was gonna cut them up.
The athletic department at EWU needs to give you some sort of funding for the marketing and the promotion that you are handing out to them on this show.
I'm a Vesperis believer.
I am going to instead focus on the fact that Sac State walloped Nichols, who was a ranked team this past week after their performance against LSU, 34-7. A quick reminder of who Sac State is and why we consistently rank them in the top 10 on a year-to-year basis. Now, sounds like they're trying to make their case to join the Pac-12 as the local community is rallying to pitch themselves as a Pac-12 team.
Sac State is legit. Nichols is legit also. They have a dynamic offense that can run the rock and throw it. Seeing that happen shows the separation of classes. It shows what happens if you're in the top 10 ranked versus the bottom 15 ranked. There is a bridge where the talent has to meet, and Sac State just flexed on them. I mean, that is a crazy win. I expected more out of Nichols.
Barnyard score of the week, 59-2. Montana wins over Moorhead. I will not make the obvious handout joke there as much as I really want to, but still, fantastic victory for Montana. We had somebody come in on the FBS live reaction show to week 3 that was a Grizz fan and was kind of painting it as if it was like, oh, I'm just so glad that the Grizz won. And meanwhile, the only 2 points they give up were off of a failed extra point that was returned for a 2-point play. So yeah, Montana took all their energy out from the North Dakota loss onto Moorhead.
Yeah, they ran all over him. It wasn't just Gilman. That running back room was exceptional in this game. Huge numbers out of them.
Last notable score, Western Carolina beats Elon, who was ranked last week. Western Carolina trying to fight for life. I put Western Carolina back on my ballot because, I mean, this is a reputable win, and they did have a really good game against NC State. I understand it's disappointing the way that they played against Campbell. I think Campbell's better than people give him credit for. Not rankable, but strong victory over an Elon team that personally I believe has been also overrated.
This was a good win for Western Carolina. Elon was surging at that moment. I am not doing this dance with them all season. I refuse to do it. But if they keep on stringing out good wins, win after win, then I will be happy to rank Western Carolina again. But right now, I'm frustrated with them because they keep on pulling me in and then just throwing me off the dance floor.
All right, let's get to the first big game of the weekend. Southern Illinois, they hold off Incarnate Word 35-28. Now, if you look at that score, you think, wow, this is probably a great seesaw-ish game. Lots of shots fired, lots of scoring. No, that wasn't the case. SIU led 35-14 at halftime. They had a really sloppy second half. They had a touchdown run, a long one, called back by DJ Williams. He also later threw a pick on that drive after the holding call brought the touchdown back. They also had a mishandled snap on a field goal that would have helped them add a little bit of extra cushion, as Incarnate Word did climb back and that passing attack for Calzada and that team tried to will their way into it. SIU does make key important defensive plays in the final drive. 2 big sacks from Lewis Wilbur and Ben Bogle to force a 4th and 23, effectively closing out the game. Shocking here that Incarnate Word has a really good day passing and uses that to get themselves back into the game, and SIU plays their asses off on defense, and their defense steps up to make big plays when they need them to.
Incarnate Word needs to figure out the run game because Calzada to Alexander Walthall is a real problem for the FCS. But having 32 yards from your leading back, not committing to it, either full air raid it or don't, because SIU came ready to play defense, and they were good. Much respect to SIU in this game. I read that they were down like 3 out of 4 of their defensive captains. What a stellar performance from them. DJ Williams, he has juice. He's a good quarterback. It not only led with the passing numbers, but rushing. 3 touchdowns on the day, like 380 total yards from scrimmage. I know he left with an injury, hoping it's okay. I know it was to his throwing hand. But SIU, you got my attention now. This is a big win. Yeah. And I don't want Incarnate Word to be this team where it's just, we're going to be the barometer for the big win. You're going to come, you're going to play us, and you're going to get more respect. But right now it's looking like that because Incarnate Word should be better. They played 2 very hard games back to back. I'm not knocking them. I still think it's a good team and a good offense. But I need to see them start coming up with some.
I think what's really disorienting for this SIU team, we're so used to them being kind of FCS Iowa, where Nick Baker was fine. He was good, very volatile, but offensively, there was always a lot left to be desired. There were a lot of games where they were winning by close margins because their defense was so good. But I feel like this year, their defense was really good. They played sloppy in the second half to let them get back into the game, but the defense steps up, gets the turnovers they need, gets the sacks that they need. What's really a shining moment potentially here for SIU, and Incarnate Word's no slouch, 543 total yards of offense. They threw for 336, ran for 207, 4.6 yards per carry, and then they averaged 10.5 yards per attempt. Those are all unbelievable totals. If this SIU team continues on this trajectory and is able to put up similar performances against the rest of their conference slate, we need to start to watch out for them. This is what's really funny to go in line with what I talked about at the beginning. The back end of the top 25 is just ass. I think it's just the world that we live in FCS football, where it's harder and harder to put together a competitive team. But the top teams continue to get better. They're able to win in the portal. They're able to win in roster development because those guys know that even though there might be enticing opportunities elsewhere, they have a better shot of developing, maybe getting to the league and getting on the field and winning championships by sticking with their squads. The top 10 right now is phenomenal. Yeah. Like, this might be one of the best top 10s that I can remember in some time. Maybe I'll get proven wrong there, but I've been blown away with these performances, and SIU continues to stack them.
SIU vaulted up into the top 10 on my poll. Just really impressed with them. And I love that you're showing love to the top 10 because right now it is strong. I mean, you have 10 teams that you could be proud of, and I'd say even 10 to 15 are still pretty good. 15 and below, we're still fleshing it out. Maybe you had a loss, but you're still talented. Yeah, Southern Illinois, I was really impressed, and I'm sure because I overreacted, they'll have some goofball loss in the next 2 weeks and make me look like a fool. But regardless, it's only for this week only. SIU, legit.
Yeah, I'm going to be tracking them close. That's one of these teams that North Dakota has made an early impression. I wanted to see how South Dakota, after they played against Wisconsin, how they were going to do.
Central Arkansas, for me, has made a really good impression this year.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm there 100% just yet with Central Arkansas, but those schools have really barreled into the top 10 convo and said, we're here to stay. And Idaho is another perfect example of one of those teams with the way that they're performing early. They had a disappointing game last year against Albany, and they whooped them. They're pissed. Albany should not have been ranked where they were. I really thought that they were on early fraud watch. This game was out of control. It was 27-3 at halftime, and Coach X said, you know what? We're just going to start letting some of the backups get into the game later on as it progresses. They had a handle on this thing. Albany scored garbage time points. This should have been even bigger of a gap. I wonder if they covered. I'd be willing to bet that they did. I wonder if anyone even had a line for this. But this is an ass whooping to all degree. The hype for Idaho, which was probably the biggest team that I was wrong on in the preseason, assuming that because they lost Giovanni McCoy and Anthony Woods and the whole group that they lost, that they were going to struggle in the first few weeks of the season. Instead, they have come out swinging. One of the best teams in their conference and deserving to be one of the best in the country.
The defense for Idaho is legit. They hold an Albany rushing attack, which is strong, mind you, to 60 total yards in this game. Well, Idaho just said, all right, we're gonna boss up and we're gonna get our lick back. We're gonna run for 247 yards on your ass. I mean, way to get your get back, man. This is a huge win for Idaho. Albany is still a threat in the CAA. They are still an offense that can have motion. But, I mean, this is a team in Idaho that rallies. Their quarterbacks are banged up. Jack Wagner's still going out there slinging for 2 touchdowns. Nate Thomas, 2 touchdowns, running all over him. It's a big win for Idaho. And they have had a very impressive first 3 weeks of this season. Genuinely, how could you... Obviously, they could have beat Oregon. That would be better. But if we're playing in the world of reality, then this is about as good of a start that Idaho could possibly have.
Shout out to new favorite nickname. And, of course, Coach Eck comes out with a banger. Tommy McCormick, or also he was listed as Thomas McCormick in the write-up I was reading.
Yeah.
He had an interception return to 32 yards. Did you see what
I saw?
His nickname is Tommy Turnovers. That's awesome.
Oh, I thought it was Tommy Takeback.
Oh, wait. Let me look it up.
I like Tommy Takeback. I like Tommy Turnovers. Give this Vandals defense as many nicknames as you can. They're all deserving. The D-line is stellar. The linebackers are stellar. The DBs aren't getting beat over the top all the time. It's really fun football that Idaho is putting out.
No, we both were wrong. Take away Tommy.
Oh, God,
jeez.
golly.
Oh, man. What a bunch of boobs. All right, Fat Stats, Sean, what do you got for us?
Oh, okay, thanks, man. Just jumping right into it.
Well, Robert, how else do you want me to lead you into it?
I don't know. How about some Fat Stats? I just didn't have it open, so I was deflecting.
Okay, all right.
I was lashing out.
Hat.
Robert Morris, quarterback. Anthony Chichit, 19 for 25, 307 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 pick. Kind of fat. Duquesne running back Jamario Clements, 12 carries.
That's a running back name if I've ever seen one. That's
a
an
great
awesome name.
RB name. 204 yards, 1 touchdown. Duquesne gets the big win. Monmouth quarterback Derek Robertson went off 23 for 36, 390 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Oh, who was he throwing to? I'll tell you. Monmouth wide receiver Josh Derry, 7 catches, 227 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the day. ETSU running back Bryson Irby, 15 carries, 147 yards, and 3 touchdowns on North Dakota State's asses. UNH quarterback Seth Morgan went off 22 for 30, 387 yards, and 6 passing touchdowns. Fat as hell. UNH wide receiver Joey Cochran was one of the recipients, 5 receptions, 129 yards, 3 touchdowns on the day.
Could have said that with more emphasis on one of those words.
Alcorn State running back Xavier Vaughn had 12 carries, 96 yards, and 4 touchdowns on the day. Central Arkansas running back Derek Powell gracing the list again, 22 carries, 173 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns. He also caught the ball 4 times for 37 yards and another tud. He's going off this year. Wake up, people. Davidson running back Mari Adams, 19 carries, 207 yards, and 2 touchdowns. North Alabama wide receiver Takari Kennebrew, 5 catches, 173 yards, 2 touchdowns. And to close it off, Lan Larison, a.k.a. Mr. Do-It-All for UC Davis, 15 carries, 87 yards. Oh, Sean, that's not so fat.
How about 88?
How about 7 catches for 92 yards and a touchdown also on your ass?
You said 87. Is it 87 or 88?
88 yards.
Okay, that impacts my decision there. I'm going Seth Morgan, though. I mean, we're talking completion percentage of 22 for 30, 387 and 6 touchdowns. That's got to be the winner.
Yeah, he went off. I'm going with Powell again. I like seeing him just run over people in the run game and also make an impact in the receiving game.
Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
I would say check out our polls on Twitter when we are putting them out, and then stay posted because we have another FCS show coming out this week, and I did poorly in FC estimates again.
We got to tape that one tomorrow, by the way. At Joe DeLeone, at Sanderson Radio. We'll talk to you folks later. Enjoy the rest of your week. Subscribe, notification bell, 5-star review, all the good stuff. We'll talk to you later.